Hague, where that meeting is taking place. Mark, do we know what's been said in this meeting?
Yes, it's closed door, but information is coming out of the meeting. The British representative to the OPCW, Peter Wilson, has been talking, has been addressing the session, and has been repeating what Britain has said throughout the Salisbury investigation. He has said, I'll quote a few bits of it, he said, Russia has waged a brazen disinformation campaign and attacked the reputation and expertise of the OPCW. But he goes on to say a combination of credible open source reporting and intelligence shows that in the 1980s, the Soviet Union developed a new class of fourth generation nerve agents known as Novichoks. We believe that only Russia had the technical means, operational experience and motive to target the Skribals. The background to this, of course, is that last week the OPCW released its assessment of what it believes what agent was used in the Salisbury attack. It sent representatives from the OPCW to Salisbury. They went to Porton Down. They went elsewhere too. They spoke to investigators, and crucially, samples from Salisbury were sent to designated OPCW labs around the world, and those labs came to the same conclusion that the Brits came to, that was that Novichok was the agent used, and that it was of a very high purity. The assumption, or the assertion, therefore, is that it could only have been carried out or only have been planted by a state actor. Now, as we might expect, the Russian representative to the organisation, who's sitting in there listening to everything that Peter Wilson is saying, has responded to on the Russian embassy's Twitter account. They've quoted various phrases used by the Brits over the course of the investigation, and they've said, no plausible alternative, highly likely twice, it's likely that, strong probability, possibly, may have been, may have, and they say that is the wording again used by the British delegation. What a depth of argument. So a degree of sarcasm there by the Russian delegation as they counter everything that the British are saying. We will be speaking to the British representative, Peter Wilson, later on this afternoon. He will give a short interview, we understand, and tonight, as they have done before at their embassy here in The Hague, the Russian delegation will fight back with their counter-narrative that they had nothing whatsoever to do with the attack in Salisbury. One thing I would add, it was interesting listening to Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, on Saturday in a speech in Moscow, suggesting that one of those designated labs, OPCW designated labs, where the samples from Salisbury were sent was in Switzerland. Now, Mr. Lavrov said that that lab had found that an entirely different nerve agent, which was never produced by Russia, but was produced by the UK, was actually found in the sample. Well, I understand that is entirely wrong. The Swiss lab, as with all the others, was sent 3 samples. One was the real sample from Salisbury. One was a positive alternative sample, in other words, a sample which contained something else, and one was a negative alternative sample, a sample which contained nothing at all. The idea behind that is that all the labs get 3 samples, they check all 3, and if they all come back with the same results, that one had nothing in it, one had something else in it, and one had Novichok in it, then they can come to an accurate conclusion. So dismissal there of what Sergei Lavrov said at the weekend, but it'll be really interesting to see both what the Brits and the Russians say tonight.
Mark, many thanks.
Of course is an important issue, but listening while we're watching PMQs to Chris Williamson chuntering away, lack of sympathy for the anti-Semitism debate yesterday, the 2 MPs, there were some brave female MPs who spoke out yesterday about the abuse they suffered. This week we have seen a Labour Party in disarray in the House of Commons. I have never seen anything like this. Labour backbench MPs standing up time after time to condemn their leader. Now, I'm sorry, I'm going to have this, because I think people need to understand the extraordinary scenes that we have seen. The fact that a Conservative Prime Minister has praised not once, not twice, but 3 times, I think, this morning, really brave Labour MPs. And I'd like to mention my Treasury Select Committee colleague, John Mann, the MP for Bassett Law, too. Those were extraordinary speeches. Nobody stands up and gives a round of applause to an MP like we did to Labour MP for Stoke, Ruth Smeeth, yesterday. I mean, that was a true remarkable speech. And Alison McGovern, the same in the Syria debate on Monday. So I'm not going to downplay Windrush, but
it was left to the Prime Minister to kind of offer consolation and comfort to your colleagues.
The Labour Party
has a proud record of standing up to racism. We
Get
utterly,
rid of Ken
we
Livingstone,
utterly
then. Do what Ian Austin
deprecate
said,
it. And
get rid of
what
Ken
I
Livingstone.
would urge Nikki and others who are trying to make political capital out of this is to say, look, let's work together, because if we look to the Conservative record, and we shouldn't get into this Punch and Judy thing, but the Conservative Party has official links with openly anti-Semitic political parties in the European Union. The Hungarian Prime Minister, for example. No. If we are, no, it's not chat. If we are serious about tackling anti-Semitism, we need to do that together, and we need a cross-party consensus. We need to recognise, as I think some people speaking in the House acknowledged, that anti-Semitism afflicts the Conservative Party, and they have those official links.
What evidence do you have for that?
Well, they've got official links with political parties, as I've said, in the European Parliament. The Prime Minister, just a moment, Nikki, the Prime Minister, the Hungarian Prime Minister, actually, hold on, Nikki,
who are making Labour MPs'
Nikki, you can just try and talk over me because you don't like the facts. If we are serious about tackling, anti-Semitism,
I mean, you missed what he was saying offline about Syria.
Let's work together.
This is a man who's totally realistic.
Let's work together in order to tackle anti-Semitism, not trying to turn it into a party political football, which is what you are
long-standing Labour MPs who are committed to the Labour Party. None of them wanted to stand, I suspect, this week and say what they had to say, but they have been brave enough to call it out. So do you support Ken Livingstone being expelled? Do you support, Ian Austin said, Ken Livingstone being expelled?
Abuse online is appalling, and we should always call it out. That's very different from suggesting, however, that the individuals responsible for that are themselves Labour Party members. And I have seen
these are
evidence. I have seen evidence. Hold on a minute. Just a minute, Nikki. Let me finish. I have evidence of right-wing trolls who are setting themselves up as pro-Labour, pro-Jeremy Corbyn individuals on social media. I have evidence of this.
Seeing it then.
I have evidence. I can show that up to the program. Claiming to be Labour supporters and then using that platform to make anti-Semitic and horrible, abusive remarks. That needs to be called out. And what we need to do is
the Labour members of Bristol West who made Tangam Debonair, who passed a motion ordering to criticise her for going to the rally in Parliament Square. These are not nothing to do with right. These people criticise Tangam Debonair for going to the rally in Parliament Square.
Stop trying to make party political football. Let's work together to tackle anti-Semitism.
When have you ever wanted to work together on this?
I need to bring in Emma. Do you think we should work together to tackle
political parties? The first thing you should do is join Ian Austin in calling out and getting Ken Livingstone expelled from the party.
Should we work together to tackle
anti-Semitism? When you're going to take it seriously, the first thing you should do is call out anybody from the Labour Party who criticised Labour MPs. Members of Bristol, absolutely. It's your parallel universe.
You're flying in the face of the total evidence of a Labour Party which has a proud record of standing up to anti-Semitism.
Then you need to expel Ken Livingstone, and you need to be very clear to the members of the Bristol Labour Party. Ian Austin, the Labour MP, stood up yesterday and called for Ken Livingstone to be expelled. Do you support that?
It's a matter for due process.
Do you support Ken Livingstone being expelled?
It is a matter for due process.
Do you support Ken Livingstone being expelled? Do you support Ken Livingstone being expelled? Do you find that the members of Bristol who criticised
let's bring in Emma Littlefield here. Let's bring in there. That was passions running high there. Your leader mentioned the issue of the culpability of the online companies and not doing enough. I mean, in a way, was he sort of letting some of the political parties off the hook?
No, well, I think, first of all political parties should be absolutely clear. This is absolutely unacceptable. There is a level of abuse that's targeted towards particularly women in public life, but people from across all political views. Yeah. I do think that the leader of the Labour Party should have moved on this much, much quicker than he did. He should have been absolutely clear and set that context, particularly as we're seeing about momentum and other issues.
What more could he have done?
I do think it's slightly strange because this week we've seen Chris indicate that he believes that the Syrian issue could well have been faked, and now we're hearing that this apparent abuse by Momentum or on the left is apparently faked as well.
I don't think that's a false characterisation as well.
I don't think that is helpful. I think we all should be, as you said, in terms of taking politics out of this, we all should be absolutely clear. We should recognise, yes, it's very clear, I think, anybody looking at this, that there is abuse coming from the left in terms of that there is an issue there. That needs to be taken on. I don't think denying it or trying to say it,
nobody's denying it,
or anything else helps Let's be very clear.
But it afflicts left and right.
But I think the second issue is that when this is reported in terms of social media and the platforms or publishers, and I know that there are questions and issues and discussion to have around that, but ultimately, many people I speak to don't feel they're taken it seriously.
Yeah, this is Hezbollah's Nasrallah says that US-led Syria strikes failed to serve Israel's interests. So this was one of the latest public statements by Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah. The comments that he made are interesting because doesn't seem, although Hezbollah is fighting militarily in Syria on the side of the Syrian government and against the rebel groups.
He's been fighting on the side of the British government against ISIS Daesh in Syria, arguably.
Yeah.
Hezbollah is a big ally, or at least
I mean,
linked to Hezbollah are a big ally.
I'm laughing about it, but in a way, it's almost there's a big element of truth to that. But one of the most underreported aspects of the war in Syria has been the Israeli involvement, and it's not that hard to find out. Like Israeli.
They bombed Syria a few days ago.
Yeah, they've been doing, as they would see it, sort of limited bombing campaigns within Syria. And they do speak about their role in southern Syria. So it's there. You can find about this, but it's not really reported very much. But what is happening is Israel, under the cover of this war, Israel is sort of carving out an occupation zone in southern Syria by working with jihadist groups, essentially, even groups that are close to Al-Qaeda, treating militants in their hospitals.
There were those pictures in the Golan Heights, but because the Israeli government then denied that they're helping Al-Qaeda or Al-Nusra or any of these linked groups, and obviously we invite Mark Regev, the ambassador, on the programme. But of course, away from the Middle East, even the British airstrikes, British news was more concerned with what could be said to be an identity politics story in some ways, but of course there are foreign ministers from the Commonwealth government, the former British Empire, meeting in London today. Let's go through this from The Guardian.
Home Office destroyed Windrush landing card, says ex-staffer. So there's essentially a whistleblower from the UKBA and the Home Office who's come out and said the landing cards of West Indian immigrants who came here as British subjects and British saw themselves very much as British and were told they were British and were told they were needed here and were asked to come over here because Britain needed reconstruction after the Second World War. Their landing cards giving records of when they arrived here were destroyed very deliberately according to this report, according to this anonymous whistleblower who's known to The Guardian. They've destroyed the records of their landing in 2010 as part of then Home Office Minister Theresa May's hostile environment for immigrants.
In fairness to the now Prime Minister of this country, under whose watch as Home Secretary this policy was put into action, officials say that some of the landing cards of these people who were brought in to help the National Health Service and so on, they were destroyed to ensure that personal data should be protected. So they're not just trying to get rid of people of colour and deport them.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty astonishing response. I mean, I could barely believe that. To ensure their personal data should not be kept for longer than necessary, the decision was taken on data protection grounds to destroy the information. I mean, it's a really sort of classically Orwellian response in the negative sense that they destroyed their data to protect it. I mean, this is staggering.
We're going to talk about the corollaries there with the comparisons there with Syria. And then we have this. David Lammy, the London Labour MP, making a lot of headway about this story. He tweeted this, shocked to say that the Home Office actually have a document saying coming home to Jamaica and telling people about their new life in Jamaica at the age of 60 plus, after living in Britain since they were 2 years old maybe, and telling them not to, telling them not to walk around after dark in unfamiliar places in Jamaica. An actual Home Office document. Do not allow strangers to know your destination for the rest of your life. Yes. Of people marched on the streets of Barcelona demanding an end to arrests and detention of political prisoners in the European Union. While these protests remained peaceful, our next guest fears that we may yet see state violence not only reminiscent of a few months ago when Catalonia voted for independence, but of Spain when led by British-backed dictator General Franco. Joining me now from his office in Barcelona is the Vice President.
The much maligned General Franco actually saved the Spanish people from being overrun by Stalin's communists. That side of the story is never told. The civil war was an attempt by the Bolsheviks to take over Spain in exactly the same manner as they tried to take over Germany, and they wanted to spread